I was talking to my friend Patrick the other day, and I told him about our podcast. He's like, "Oh, I'll definitely listen." And I was like, "Yeah, great. Have you listened to? Have you seen Mandalorian?" He's like, "No. Are there spoilers for it?" I was like, "Ooh, yeah." For like 2 of our 3 episodes, and the third, have you seen Bad Batch? No. And I'm like, ooh.
What have you seen?
I don't know if you're gonna like it very much, but it's okay because we have the Jedi Survivor episode. Have you played that yet? No. So I don't know if he's gonna be a viewer.
Hello and welcome to Force for Thought. Today, Luke's going rogue.
Luke,
what are you going rogue about?
Today I am going rogue about the new Star Wars video game, Jedi Survivor. Came out just under a month ago, and I had the chance to play through it in completion. Not completion, I did not 100% it, but I played through the story, and I really liked it.
Shouldn't we do the music?
When do we do the music?
I think it's what are you going rogue about, and you say Jedi Survivor, and then we go to the music, right?
Okay. I forgot.
That's good talk. Your dad's gonna love this episode.
This is our first.
No, cut that. Boy, that music was good. Anyway, I'm going rogue about Jedi Survivor today. I played through the story, and I really liked it. So for those that don't know, I'm sorry that you don't know because I will be spoiling it completely today, but it is the sequel to 2019's Jedi Fallen Order. It follows the story of a character named Cal Kestis, who is a Jedi survivor of Order 66. The first game dealt with him healing from the trauma of Order 66 and becoming a Jedi Knight. And then this game is all about him dealing with what to do as a Jedi survivor in his prime, basically, and what that means to be a Jedi in this era of the Galactic Empire's reign, and how he can fight and make a difference without getting himself killed and getting the ones he loves killed.
What'd you play it on? Or unless you have that written down.
I played it on PC, unfortunately, because it was riddled with performance issues. It was well documented that at launch, Jedi Survivor performed terribly on PC. Apparently, it performed great on PS5 and Xbox Series X, so good for those people, but I had significant frame drops and crashes. I never had a corrupted save file, thank God, but I am disappointed because it did affect how much I like the story, which isn't really fair because I'm not that big of a video game fan. I play a lot of video games, but not that many different video games. And so I was really, I wouldn't have gotten this game if it wasn't Star Wars, so I was really just in it for the Star Wars aspect. And I like it a lot less because of the performance issues. It's like if you watched season 3 of The Mandalorian in 480p. It's the same story, but you just like it less. And whether that's right or not, it's the way it is. But I loved the game. I'm going to get right into it. The characters are what makes the game for me. There's Cal Kestis, who's the main character, of course. He's fighting the Empire tooth and nail. He parted ways with his old crew from the first game, and he's fighting the Empire kind of solo. He has like a new crew when the game starts, but they die almost immediately, and he has this moment where they've been, fighting, dying, and he looks at the galactic map or the stats of what he's been doing, and he says, wow, we've hardly made a difference. And that's what the game is about, basically, is like how much can you fight, how much of yourself can you give up for the fight just to fight something that is so unbeatable, at least at this stage in the timeline.
I feel like that's one of my favorite themes of Star Wars, and I feel like Max and you and I specifically really like that aspect, though. So far, I'm really intrigued. Are the characters in the first game, his old crew, not in it at all?
No, they are.
Okay.
They get reintroduced shortly after the beginning, and he kind of goes through like a little bit of the same story beats of like found family from the first game, but it's different. But yeah, for the characters from the first game, Cere Junda, Eno Cordova, and Marin are all in it, and they're all interesting characters. They're really supporting characters in this game. Their story arcs were kind of contained in the Fallen Order Dark Temple comic, or the first game, or the Battle Scars book, and those are all good stories, and I like them, honestly, a lot more than this game, but that's not what we're here to talk about. But new in this game is the character Dagan Gera, who is a High Republic Jedi who was frozen in stasis for 200 years, and then Cal rescues him in this game. And I love that story beat. I'm a big High Republic fan. I've been following it since the beginning, and this is the most mainstream the High Republic has ever been. So just from like a meta standpoint in the fandom, I'm really excited to be watching like all these people get introduced to the High Republic and they're liking it. But Dagan Gera's story in this game is he was searching for the planet Tanalorr in the High Republic era about 200 years ago. Tanalorr is in the center or like on the edge of what's called the Kobo Abyss. Kobo is a planet, and the Abyss is a section of unnavigable space. And Tanalorr is like this, almost mythological, unreachable oasis where if you get there, no one else can get there. And because it's a video game, there's a couple MacGuffins that can lead you there. There's like the Abyss Compass or the Array or something. And so there are ways to get there, but it's a really interesting story point for the game because Dagan Gera comes out of stasis and he's still trying to get to Tanalorr, and he's actually fallen to the dark side in his pursuit of it because in his time when he was searching for Tanalorr, he petitioned the Jedi Council to like dedicate resources and set up an outpost on Tanalorr for like the Outer Rim. And then the Nihil found Tanalorr and started like fighting Dagan Gera, which canonically makes sense because the Nihil are the villains in the High Republic, and they are like technologically not savvy, but their shtick is that they have technology that can counter the Jedi. And they're not Jedi themselves, but they have what's called path engines where they can travel through hyperspace in a very unique way. I won't get too into the weeds, but it does make sense that the Nihil are able to get to Tanalorr, even though Tanalorr is unreachable, which I thought was a very interesting development, and it was very clever story writing to have both an unreachable place and several people reach it. So that was a risky move, but I think it worked out.
Did it well.
So Dagan Gera comes out of stasis, and he's still trying to get to Tanalorr, and he's fallen to the dark side because the Jedi Council ordered him to give up on Tanalorr after the Nihil infiltrated it because the Nihil became a galactic problem and they had to regroup on Coruscant and get their ducks in a row. And the council said, Dagan, leave Tanalorr. And Dagan was furious, fell to the dark side, killed a bunch of Jedi. And that was one of the plot points that didn't really stick with me because other than Dagan Gera being obsessed with Tanalorr, we'd never get like a personal connection or a really compelling reason for why he is so obsessed with it other than he likes it and thinks it's neat.
Just wait till a comic, I'm sure.
I know. I hope so. Or like in the High Republic can explore that too, and I hope they do. But narratively, in the game, Dagan exists as a cautionary tale for Cal on the dangers of obsession and how it can lead to the dark side. And that all affects Cal in a really interesting way that I did like. The last character in the game that I think is worth talking about is Bodakuna. He is a new friend of Cal. He's in Cal's new crew. He was not in the last game. And he is joining Cal on the mission to find Tanalorr and stop Dagan from getting to Tanalorr. Bode has a daughter back home that he establishes in the very beginning, and his mission is just to make the galaxy safe for her. So later, once Cal and friends, beat the game, get the compass to Tanalorr, Bode betrays them, and it's like, oh, he was a bad guy, and it's played as a big reveal. I kind of saw it coming from a mile away because there was no reason to introduce another friend of Cal narratively. Yeah. Like, he had plenty of friends. There was no reason
what color
to
is
get
his hair?
one more. He had black hair.
Oh, he's a bad guy.
But
it's the visual cues, really.
It is. He's also yoked. Like, he is jacked. Yeah. There's no reason for him to be that muscular and be
You
a
said
good
he's
guy.
human?
He is human. Which is a bummer, because I really like when they include non-human characters in Star Wars, and the video games are just the easiest place to do that. Dagan Gera is non-human, and he had a cool design. He's a unique alien, at least as far as I'm aware, but he is humanoid. He just has like different colored skin, and I thought it was cool. He's also missing an arm, so that was neat. Just a fun little gimmick for
no like
gameplay
robotic
stuff.
armor or anything either.
No, because in his time, he was trying to get the last Kobo compass to get to Tanalorr, and his friend Centauri Kree had the last one, and the council ordered all of them destroyed, and she had the last one, and he was going to grab it, and she just cut off his arm, and then he passed out, and she put him in stasis.
Oh, so he had no time.
That was like right before.
Yes, that's like basically why he got into the Bacta tank, because they were never intending to like leave him for hundreds of years, but then the Great Disaster of the High Republic, the Legacy run, being sabotaged and flying debris through hyperspace, shattered the moon of Kobo, and for that and other reasons with the Nihil, the Jedi abandoned Kobo and Tanalorr, and then died of natural causes or anything else. And then 200 years later, Dagan Gera was still there, and Cal kind of stumbles upon him.
I know you have like a lot to go through, but I am excited for my next Rogue One, which is definitely going to be the intricacies of, as you know, Max, my love and intrigue for the realty within the Star Wars universe. But now I'm also very interested in like robotic arms and like limbs. It's like, is that like a dental thing? Like, can you just easily get that fixed? is that readily available? Because like if Luke gets one, he's just like basically part of like he's like basically just a rebel. Like
yeah, he gets it like day of or something.
Yeah, I mean
like,
that's gotta cost some money.
They're putting their lives on the line every single day. I'm sure they have some good insurance.
But I mean, they're like a paper thin operation, right? They're kind of like Scotch tape.
I'm sure the Galactic Insurance Company said, "Oh, I'm sorry, since there was a Darth Vader inflicted injury, you're going to have to go through the Imperial Insurance, and that takes 6 to 8 months." So.
Okay, yeah, I'm very excited for this next Rogue One. Anyway, continue, Luke. I'm so sorry.
So those are the characters. The gameplay was good. It is almost unfair to follow up such a great video game in Jedi Fallen Order because that gameplay is great, and if this gameplay is not improved upon, it's disappointing.
It's just the same.
Mm-hmm. And so it was a lot of the same. They did add more elements, but to make a video game about a Jedi character progressing from traumatized ex-Padawan to Jedi Knight, which they did in Jedi Fallen Order, to then in this game go from Jedi Knight to stronger Jedi Knight, it's just harder to portray that and to make that an interesting progression system for a video game.
But I feel like you could do almost from like what Arkham Asylum did to Arkham Knight or Arkham City, where it's like the gameplay is really cool, but you just have like a different space to I don't know, I just do battle in, but also like the games are so far and few in between now. There's like X amount of games every couple of years that I'm interested versus I feel like back in like 2008, 2009, granted I was in high school and middle school then, but I feel like back then it was like every 6 months or every 3 months there was a game I really, really wanted to play. But I feel like in Asylum, like in City, which came out like I think 2 years after Asylum, going Batman route, but I felt like what they could have added in Asylum, they clearly could have done those mechanics within that space. But I feel like they purposely withheld them
to make City look better.
Yes, exactly, which is just like a smart way to go.
Yeah, I've played those games also, and I was thinking a lot about it when I was pondering my feelings on this game, because it's a lot easier to introduce new combat mechanisms with Batman or like the Spider-Man game I also really love, because they are superheroes with gadgets, and you can introduce new gadgets. You know, in the first game, Cal uses how to do force pull and force push and double jump, which is like, you know, the gold standard for a Jedi, but where do you go from there? Like, he learns how to do like force lift something up and force push something down, and it's like that's a little different than pull and push.
I'd be okay with some gadgets. That'd be interesting.
Didn't he get to use a blaster in this one?
Yes, he did. That was one of his combat stances, so he gets to have a choice between like he gets to at a save point you choose 2 of the I think 6 combat stances to go forward, and they are single blade, double blade, single double bladed lightsaber, blaster stance, and no, I mean like akimbo, like 2 lightsabers like Ahsoka, or Darth Maul like double bladed lightsaber, or blaster stance, which he also uses a lightsaber, and he kind of uses it like Count Dooku, like fencing, which is fun. That's the one I use most of the time, and crossguard like Kylo Ren.
Yeah.
And that was another kind of issue I had with the game, is that in Jedi Fallen Order, when Cal is healing from his trauma and he's like reliving his memories and lessons that he learned from his master before Order 66, Joro Tapal, and then he goes to Ilum and makes his own lightsaber, and he like fuses it with his deceased master's lightsaber, Joro Tapal's, and he makes it double-bladed and it can break apart. And then that's really fun, but that's a very story-driven reason to introduce a gameplay element.
Yeah.
In this game, Bode just kind of tosses him a gun. He's like, hey, use a gun. And then you do. And then you fight an enemy that has a crossguard lightsaber, and Cal's like, oh, I bet I can do that. And then you add a crossguard lightsaber. And
you don't need to... You can do whatever saber you want, though, as well, right? Like, you don't
have
to...
Yeah.
Which is always an odd thing for me. If it's like a story-driven thing where Cal specifically makes a saber,
because you want to know what Cal Kestis' lightsaber is.
Yeah,
like, no, you tell me.
You can also modify the design of the lightsaber, like not just color, like all of the components.
Yeah, you were in the last game too, right? Mm-hmm. Which is very fun, but at the same time, like, I don't know, like if I was gonna play Luke Skywalker in a video game, I don't want to customize that.
Yeah,
that should be it, unless it's green. I'd rather have green than blue. But like, other than that.
It's interesting because the game is canon, so there's only so much like liberty you can take with the customization and stuff, and like the story has to be very linear, because Knights of the Old Republic is very praised for having like multiple story lines that you can go through, where you either go a light side story arc or a dark side story arc, and that's really cool, but that's not canon, and so you have that liberty.
Yes.
I have put in a good amount of thought to this. I think it would be interesting to do a story like that, like if they did Jedi Survivor like that, and you can choose to either go light side or dark side.
Yeah.
And then, like, what does that mean for canon? Like, if they just don't confirm which way it is, like, if it doesn't have any lasting impacts on the galaxy or the movies as a whole, it could be either.
Yeah.
And I just think that would be really fun. I think it's worth exploring, and I'm sure that they're putting themselves in a box about not being able to break from canon and having to have an established story, but I think they could work outside the box a little bit more.
Canon's so important, but like if you look at Galaxy's Edge, right? They just like threw 2 years in or 3 years in, they were like, we're done with that. Like, let's just throw
Here's Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just throw Grogu in there. Because how could you not? And that's the thing is, like, I don't think everything needs to be canon. Like, games specifically should just kind of be its own sandbox where you can play in, right? And then, like, anything you watch or consume, like reading or whatever, like, when you don't have a choice as, like, if we're just consuming content versus, like, going through a story by playing it, I feel like it would be fun just to have that stuff be off, and you can get as crazy as you want it to be.
Yeah, because you're still not writing anything off, right? You're still, like, if they came out and they said, Jedi Survivor isn't canon, that still doesn't mean that Cal Kestis can't show up in Kenobi Season 2 or something like that.
And if he does, that's canon.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
That being said, the canon impact in the canon impacts of this game are substantial because the main storyline is that Seer is running the hidden path from Kenobi.
Oh,
it was really exciting, and that's why they want to get to Tanalorr so bad, because it's hidden from the Empire so completely. If they could get there, then that's the end game for the hidden
us
path.
back in.
So there was a lot of, I think, desire for Cal Kestis to show up in the Kenobi series. Given that development, do you think we'll see Cal Kestis in a Kenobi Season 2?
I don't, just because I think if they go Kenobi Season 2, it'll be different. I don't think they would go back with the Path of the Open Hand. Yeah. The High Republic introduced the Path of the Open Hand, and Kenobi introduced the Hidden Path, and I have a hard time keeping those straight.
Of the hand.
Yeah, right. So I think if they went with Kenobi Season 2, I don't think they would talk about the path as much, because I guess I don't know why. I just didn't think they would.
He's like the perfect actor to also like actually show up in something live action. Like, I feel like age-wise, obviously.
I know. It's no mistake that they hired he's not an A-list actor, but he's an established actor. Like, he's in live action things.
Shameless. Yeah. I feel like, did you guys see the commercial with him and Mark Hamill?
Yeah.
I like it. I like that.
Mark Hamill's like, they never gave me 2 lightsabers.
Yeah. Thank God, because you could customize them if they did.
Matt would be having complexes as a child trying to
Which
figure
one do
this
I
out.
buy?
Cameron Monaghan was at Celebration in 2019 for Fallen Order, and I believe 2023 in London. And he's a lot of fun. Like, I would love to see him in live action. He knows that he's a video game character, and he has like a lot of fun with it. Like, at the Celebration, he kept talking about how they had ponchos in Fallen Order because that's the only customizable feature. Yeah. And he just thinks it's the coolest thing. And you wore a poncho on stage, and
that's fun.
He has a lot of fun with it.
Customize the hair, customize the uniform. Don't customize the lightsaber if it's canon.
Yeah, that's what you think.
Yeah,
I really liked customizing
because
the lightsaber.
they do sell Cal Kestis lightsabers.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's so confusing.
That is. I would consider that an unforced error because it is confusing, but the Cal Kestis lightsaber is not the one that he designs at the end of Fallen Order on Ilum. It's just Jaro Tapal's. Yeah.
Oh, see.
Which maybe just like brand recognition, they had to call it Cal Kestis' lightsaber.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Yeah.
But the people who play the game know that it's Jaro Tapal's and arguably like Jaro Tapal's better because Jaro Tapal is a oh my god, I can't think of the species right now. What's Zeb Aurelius from
Lasat.
Lasat, thank you.
My god.
Yes, he's a Lasat. And so he's the only Lasat that we've ever seen outside of Zeb. So when you see him, you're like, oh,
yeah,
Lasat Jedi.
I really like Jaro Tapal. But back to Jedi Survivor. There were a few other gameplay elements that I didn't really care about because I'm not that big of a video game guy. They added fast travel to this game, which is really good for completionists that are trying to 100% it. But I think that kind of gave them an excuse to just make one of the maps really, really big instead of adding a lot of smaller other planets. Because like Kobo is the main planet where you're on most of the game, and it's massive and there's a lot to explore. But for me, I'm not that into just exploring the same planet. I would way rather go see other planets, and I think Jedi Fallen Order did that better because like you went to Kashyyyk and you went to Ilum. And so this one is... Sorry, go ahead.
In Fallen Order, I feel like that's something that's started getting repetitive for me, was like going to different planets that all kind of... They just had like a different skin almost around them,
yeah.
where it was like I feel like all the planets started feeling the same weirdly, even though they looked different. They started.
I mean, they're all
feeling the same.
designed like a video game. Like,
Yeah.
you can't,
Exactly, and
there's
that's
only
it's
so much
hard.
you can do about that.
Yeah, but exactly, because like all the climbing abilities and stuff, it's like, okay, well, we have to indicate somehow visually that you can climb this,
Yes.
or that this is a path that you slide down instead of like
Yeah.
walking down or
So
something.
I'd be interested in the new game just to see if I like that better, just because that was one of my only gripes with the first one.
Yeah.
That's all. I'm so sorry. You were on a roll.
No, you're fine. You're fine. But the map's a lot bigger. Kobo's massive. You also spend a lot of the game on Jedi, which is also really big. And so to navigate the terrain, there's fast travel, but the first time you're playing through the campaign, you don't have fast travel. So they do give you like mounts to ride on, which is really cool. I was a little disappointed with them because you don't like do any combat or anything with them, or at least I didn't. But I didn't do any side missions because I was really just invested in finishing the story
Interesting.
before I went on vacation for one, and so that it wouldn't get spoiled for me because I was really excited.
And
to
so
see
that you
where
could
it ended.
record this as well.
Well, yeah, and so I could record this.
You're really against the clock.
But one of my favorite little side joke. I don't even know if it's a joke. I thought it was hilarious, but one of the mounts on Jeddah is a big like alien looking camel. It's like 3 times taller, and like kind of reptilian looking, but it's basically a camel because you're riding into the desert, and it's called a spamel. It's literally just a space camel.
Space camel.
I thought that was hysterical.
That's like the last thing they
Spamel.
added in the game. Like, hey, what do you got? I got nothing.
Hey, Bill, did you name that space camel yet? Yeah. Yeah, it's a spamel. But
And that's where spam comes from, folks.
Oh, now we're gonna look at the same.
So
like I eat spam a lot.
I did like a lot of the game, but it also had its issues. The biggest one for me was the way they handled Dagon Gera, because I was so excited to see a High Republic Jedi in the Galactic Empire age. And we had the opportunity to tell a very interesting story of a Jedi from another time who has to grapple with everyone he knows being dead. And instead, he just wanted to get to Tanalorr, which, again, they didn't really give a compelling
why?
reason for why. But I think there was a missing story element on why he was obsessed with Tanalorr. He wants to set up a base for the Jedi in the Outer Rim, but like he's so obsessed with it. Cut that. I already said that. Excuse me, I'm reading.
Your notes are too intense.
The first thing he does when getting out of his Bacta tank, when Cal rescues him, is bleeding his kyber crystal.
Oh, yeah.
Which was really cool to see, and I liked it, but that does bring up an issue with me that I've had since 2017 with The Last Jedi, that he does not need to just immediately get a red lightsaber because he's a bad guy. Like, because he's not that much of a bad guy. He just wants to get to Tanalorr. Like, in his age, he was killing Jedi, and that's bad. So I'm not like a Dagon Gera defendist, but I think it would have been a lot
Dagon
more.
Gera did nothing wrong. Get the t-shirts made. Get the t-shirts made.
I think it would have been a lot more interesting if he was less of a villain and more of just like a different path that Cal, like the example of his story would be like a different path that Cal could have taken. But I feel like the game just had to very clearly and immediately establish him as a villain, and they didn't know how to do that narratively, so they just had him bleed his kyber crystal immediately.
So it's a cool thing that's kind of wasted in a moment, because I also feel like it would be cool to live in that gray area, like you said, not totally a bad guy, but besides kind of doing really bad guy things by killing Jedi. But I feel like having a blue lightsaber or a purple saber, like I feel like things like that would be really cool to see as I don't know, seeing a villain using a non-red lightsaber. I know it's a kind of just the way, like the visuals, but like it would be cool to break that just to see.
Yeah, I agree. But
because it was we see Darth Vader bleed a red crystal in the Darth Vader comic books written by Charles Soule, but that felt very rewarding, right? Because last time we saw Darth Vader in Revenge of the Sith, he didn't have his red lightsaber, and in A New Hope he does. So it's really fun to explore that. But like you are getting at, like that was earned, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And he's not concerned. He's got one arm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Zero concern about the arm, just focused on the crystal.
Basically
insane.
Yeah.
And in his timeline, that like just happened.
Yes.
So he's like, I was doing something before this.
Yeah, like the equivalent of like 10 minutes ago, he lost an arm, and he
Right.
wakes up and is like, "Got to get to Tanalorr."
I wonder if it's like the equivalent of waking up from like a really good nap when you just get up and like you don't know where you are or when you are, and you're like, oh man, just give me a minute.
For me, those are the rest of the day. I can never recover from that kind of nap.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of days I eat dinner in bed.
Were there I'm kind of going back to the maps topic. Were there any maps that you did not like that whenever you had to go there, you were kind of like, ugh, this place again?
Like the Batmobile in Arkham City. No, Asylum. No, Night.
Third
time's the charm.
I did
No,
have
Origins. Sorry, last one.
I did have that feeling a couple times because I wasn't doing any of the side missions, I was just doing the story. There was a lot of go to Jeddah and talk to Seer about Kobo, and then you do that, and it's all right. Go to Kobo and do that, and it's all right. Go back to Jeddah and talk to Seer about this, and I was like,
could have been
it's just a lot of back and forth, and I was getting a little sick of it. Like if I was more of a completionist, there's like a lot of side missions I could do on Jeddah and Kobo in the meantime, but because I was just trying to get the story, I was pretty annoyed with that. Yes.
So, did you do any of the side missions just to test it out, just to see what that would be like?
Unless I did accidentally, I really don't think so.
Yeah, I find this main story to be more rewarding because you can go back and do those side missions. Because I feel like sometimes when you do side missions, you get lost and you're like, wait, what is this game even about? You're getting so derailed from the actual story.
That's the problem when I played Fallen Order, because I'm so OCD and I am a completionist, is I have a issue leaving a planet if I'm like, no, I know I never explored that one cave.
It says 94%.
Yeah, you have to go like all the way back to like explore this one random cave,
and
to
you're never
unlock
gonna
a chest,
remember it.
And it's like,
yeah. And the game is so big. I agree, but then the story is like the most important thing. But you're like, there's a lot left over here. Like, how am I gonna not get that?
Exactly.
Or like in the Lego games, significantly easier or harder. That's the worst.
The mini kits
in the Lego games when you're like, I need to get that, but I can't.
But I
now.
need to super jump, so I need to go. Come back
and
free
so you're
play
like,
and play
I
as
am
Jar
gonna,
Jar.
like, I'm so sorry, myself in 5 months. Like the worst.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in Jedi Fallen Order and Survivor also. Like you unlock ways to traverse that you can access new areas that you couldn't before. And so you're looking at a big red gate and you see like a chest on the other side and you're like, oh man, I'll be back later. I guess.
I hate that feeling because then you're like again going back to middle school, like in 7th, 8th grade, thinking about that in study hall, trying to plot it out in my head how I'm gonna figure it out later.
I've made that mistake in Fallen Order, the first game, too, because I think Dathomir was one of the first planets that I visited, and I didn't have the ability to double jump yet, and before you can like access like the entire second half of the map, you need to have the double jump ability. So there was a part where you get to like a bridge, and there's a guy standing there, and he's like, oh, and like he just has like a repeating NPC line, something about how like, oh, it looks a little too far to jump.
And then you just try really hard, and then you fall, like,
I killed
times.
myself like 5 times, and then I'm
I
like, God, I have to unlock this ability, don't I? This is so annoying.
I imagine the guy saw you before you complete the line when you're like, oh, I imagine he saw you. Like, oh, howdy there, traveler.
I think he does. I think he calls you traveler.
Yeah,
actually.
that makes a lot of sense.
But back to Dagan Gera, I was disappointed with his character because of the red lightsaber for one, which I was bothered with because I have that gripe with the sequel trilogy. People complain a lot about Finn's character arc, and they say it wasn't very well handled. But I think his character arc in The Last Jedi is a very good story about a non-Jedi character's struggle with the dark side and like fighting what you hate or saving what you love. And I won't get into the weeds, but I think that's what Finn's character arc is about in The Last Jedi. And then they bring it up again in The Rise of Skywalker, which everyone says that The Rise of Skywalker completely ignored everything in The Last Jedi. But that scene when they're on the Death Star's ruined planet, and Finn says to Poe, we have to go after her. You have no idea what she's going through. And Poe turns back and says, and you do? And he says, yeah, and so does Leia. And then Poe says, well, I'm not Leia. And Finn says, that's for damn sure, because Finn is talking about the struggle with the dark side that Rey is going through in Episode 9, that he went through in Episode 8, that Leia went through in between Episode 6 and 7. And because it wasn't telegraphed to the audience with something as obvious as a red lightsaber, so many people missed it, or at least just willfully ignore it because they wanted to dislike the sequels. And I just disliked seeing, maybe it was just being reminded of that in Jedi Survivor with Dagan Gera just immediately getting a red lightsaber. But
do you think that this will be remind me to ask you the same question is do you think that Finn was originally supposed to end up being Force sensitive in that whole theory where he's supposed to be a Jedi and will show up in the next movie and whatnot? Let's talk about that in a little bit.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk about that later. But Dagan Gera's story was good minus that element, except if they wanted to show a cautionary tale to Cal about the dangers of obsession and turning to the dark side, I think Eno Cordova is a character ripe for that purpose. Because, Max, you played Fallen Order. Were you shocked when I told you that he was in this game?
I was, yes. That was one of the first questions I had as soon as you said his name.
He is not explicitly dead in Fallen Order, but the entirety of the first game, you're like chasing his holocrons.
His ghost, yeah.
He's like talking to you as a hologram, and like he's the one that created the holocron with all the Force-sensitive children, and like BD-1 was his droid. Like he has a very distinct presence in Fallen Order, and he's completely absent, and they never really talk about it because I assumed because he was dead, but apparently he was just off doing whatever, watching the entire galaxy fall apart, Order 66, the Galactic Empire, and he was obsessed with learning about other cultures. You learn about this in the Jedi Fallen Order Dark Temple comic that also came out in 2019, and he was, I would argue, obsessed with learning about other cultures and the Zepho, and that's what the whole first game is about, and then they just left all of that on the table, had him come back basically for no purpose at all, and then introduced a brand new character to tell a story that his character was already halfway along on.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I was a little buffed with that. I think, honestly, the only reason that they did bring Eno Cordova back is because Bodakuna kills him when he turns on the gang. And I think they needed to make that personal because, again, it couldn't just be a story of like someone that's not all the way bad, but definitely not good, just trying to make the galaxy safe for his daughter. Like they had to make it personal and had to make Bode a definitive bad guy.
And they didn't want to kill any of the other established crew members like
Right.
Mirren or someone.
Right. And so...
And the developers were like, well, I think people already assume this guy's dead, so...
Exactly. And like, Eno Cordova does do a lot in the game of like deciphering hidden or High Republic clues and adjusting their technology to still work, and like that his character is established as doing that, but they could have worked around that, and I think they should have. But regardless, Bode kills him to get the final compass to Tanalorr because he wants to save Tanalorr for just himself and his daughter, because it's revealed that Bode is also a Jedi survivor, and he was working with the Inquisitorius this whole time, and he was, sent to infiltrate Cal's team, and now so that does do a lot for legitimizing his...
So do you fight another Inquisitor?
No, Bode, if you count him, he's not really an Inquisitor.
Inquisitor adjacent.
Yes.
The same, but not really.
Exactly. So it does legitimize Bode's story of wanting to make the galaxy safe for his daughter, because his wife was killed by Inquisitors and his daughter could be at any time. And Bode is like an Imperial informant, and he like works with the Empire. But once he learns about Tanalorr, that is the end game. That's how to keep anyone safe. And Cal and Seer want to use it for the hidden path to keep all of the children, the Force-sensitive kids out there in the galaxy, safe from the Empire. And again, that could have been a really interesting story if Bode chose not to do that and just wanted to keep it for his daughter, which they do get into. Bode says to Cal, like, if you bring the hidden path here, can you guarantee that my daughter will be safe? And Cal has nothing to say because he can't. And that's a good beat, but I really wish it was more like these friends just have different ideologies and not these friends used to be friends, but now one just slaughtered his other friend, Eno Cordova, and now he's just definitely a bad guy. And again, I don't think they really needed to make him a Jedi, but he took Dagan Gera's lightsaber when they defeated Dagan Gera, and it's like, oh, another red lightsaber bad guy, in case you missed it.
Yeah.
Those are my thoughts on the game as a whole. I like it because I like Star Wars. I would give it an 8 out of 10, which
I was just gonna ask.
Seems high, but if you know me, I rate almost everything that's Star Wars significantly higher.
Yes, we
do
know that.
I can't think of anything that I would really rate lower than this, like maybe the Book of Boba Fett.
Oh man, that's not high praise.
No, it's not.
The fact that it's 8 is blowing my mind, though. It's like when I say something's an 8, it's like putting my personal reputation on the line.
You just need a new scale. You just need to say like,
Maybe you should do
it's
things
like a
on a
Star.
5.
It's like a Star Wars 3. And
should I
then
do?
You can just
it would be
clarify.
like a Star Wars 1 or 2. Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Like a video game
Yeah.
8, but a Star Wars 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Because there
Okay,
is a lot
not bad.
of good lore in the game, which I'm all about.
High Republic, baby.
Yeah, I love the High Republic. The side missions, which I didn't do, like you're introduced to them still in the main story mission. The one that looked really cool was a bounty hunter named Cage. She's a female Natalan character, which we've never seen in live action. There are some in the High Republic, and debatable live action. But it was really cool seeing a photoreal female Natalan. And for those that don't know, the Nautilans are the Kit Fisto species, the green tentacle fish people, my all-time favorite by a mile. And she was like giving out bounties to Cal to catch bounty hunters, and that's like a cool story arc. And I saw on TikTok, if you complete all of those, then Boba Fett comes and collects a bounty on Cage, and it's like just a hat on a hat on a hat, and that's a fun element.
That's very fun. If you're a bounty hunter, are you just a bounty hunter then?
You become the very thing you swore to destroy.
Yes, I was like, when you said that, I was like, what a funny concept.
Funny.
That is funny. But those are basically all my thoughts on Jedi Survivor. I hope I didn't forget to talk about anything pressing.
Say what you want to say about Cage. The name?
I won't.
Real quick, I feel like you should do a follow-up when you do the side missions to see if that...
I was thinking about that. Honestly, I don't know if I'll ever pick up the game again.
Oh, no.
Unfortunately. I really don't enjoy action-adventure video games.
Yeah.
Like, if it wasn't Star Wars, like, I never think I want to go play an action-adventure video game right now. Like, that's never an activity I would choose to do if it wasn't Star Wars. Like, I played Spider-Man in 2018 because that was Spider-Man. And I played this because it was Star Wars, but... I'm not that into the genre.
See, I would until I've at least completed it. Like, I have no desire to ever pick up Fallen Order again. It was an incredible game, but I've finished it 100%. So I'm
did you
done
100% it?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
What constitutes as a good game? I know that's off topic, but isn't it weird? Like, I could still pick up Halo 3 to this day and play it and love it.
Mm-hmm.
So is that, you know what I mean?
I don't know how tied to nostalgia that is, though.
That's what I'm saying. Like, but shouldn't, like, I don't know. Are we going to have... it doesn't seem like we have any sort of nostalgia for any sort of games that are more recent. I know I'm not a big, like, Zelda fan or something, and I know, like, a bunch of new... I don't know. I feel like all those games people have been loving, but that's a different...
I did think of one other thing I wanted to talk about.
Please. Save me from this rant. I didn't know how to finish.
Insert this. Darth Vader is in this game again, and Darth Vader... is obviously a great character.
Yeah, it seems like something you should have mentioned.
I know. He's barely in it, which is important that they barely include him because he's such a massive presence and he's, let's face it, very overpowered. There's no winning against him. And they did that great in Fallen Order. You remember his scenes in Fallen Order? Like, he shows up, he slaughters the main villain of the entire game, and then Seer tries to fight him, and he just flicks her to the side. And then Cal tries to fight him and just immediately runs away. Like, there is no fighting him. It's just an escape.
Yeah.
And then in
you're
this
running
game,
out of Fortress Inquisitorius, and you're like breaking the walls to like flood him in and everything.
Yes.
Which was my only complaint about Kenobi, which was
it was done better already.
Yeah, like I was like, they literally did this already.
But they do that again though later when his helmet is slashed, and they're like, oh, we that's a whole.
I'm
Kenobi.
more okay with doing that again, and like they did in Rebels though.
I was okay with both of them.
So
I was like, I like seeing this, so I'm not upset. But they definitely did this before.
Yes,
already.
But it is interesting with Kenobi, which we have to talk about soon.
Yes. But Darth Vader in Jedi Survivor, he shows up. It doesn't make as much sense in terms of the story. Like, Bode rats on Cal and Seer and the Path, and then Vader shows up on Jedha to destroy it, which is very interesting canonically because this story takes place not in the year 9 BBY, so the year after... No, excuse me. The same year as Kenobi. Because Kenobi took place in 9 BBY. Because it was 10 years after Revenge of the Sith. Because Leia was 10. And Luke was 10, right?
Yeah. I believe so.
But it introduces an interesting thing canonically that Darth Vader gets defeated in battle for like the first time in his career by Obi-Wan. Yeah. And then regroups and he's like, all right, I need a win. I'm going to Jedha. And I'm going to fight Seer and I'm going to kill her. And he does, but... She dies at Vader's hand, but she kind of wins the fight. Like, he gets like a cheap shot at her at the end. Like, you play as Seer, which was another fun gameplay element.
Did you know that you were going to die in that moment? You're like, oh, I see where this is going.
Well, yeah, because you start playing as Seer when the Imperials start raiding the Path, and it's like they're bringing AT-ATs, and it's like bad news for Jedha, and you really think that Seer's going to die, and then Vader shows up, and you're like, oh, she's definitely going to die. But then you do a boss fight with Vader, and kind of just like it has to be because it's a video game. Like, he has a health bar, and you whittle down his health, and you kind of beat him. And I'm like, wait, I don't think I should be beating Vader. And then you have like this cutscene, and she like slices him up a good couple times. He's like breathing really heavy, and then she like makes a final lunge at him, and he stabs her when she jumps at him. And it's like Vader was really on the defensive this whole time, and they make a comment about how Vader did not struggle with his battle with her in Fallen Order, and she talks about how she's let go of her fear, which is a nice moment for her as a character. But I thought the Vader element of this game was a little lackluster.
Well, like you said, he was coming hot off his fight against Obi-Wan, right? He's a little rattled.
Yeah, he does fight like it. But, I mean,
it is interesting,
on the one hand,
though.
it's unfair, but it also doesn't seem unfair to keep comparing this game to its predecessor, Fallen Order. But almost every single element, Fallen Order just did a little bit better. I will say the ending is very intriguing because Cal doesn't die, which I kind of thought he was. No, excuse me. Cut that. Another element I wanted to talk about of the game. Another element I wanted to talk about of the game is Cal starts embracing the dark side. And that's both a story element and a gameplay element. Like, it says when he's losing a fight, like, hit this button to embrace the dark side. And you do, and the screen goes red, and he gets like 10x damage, and he just starts slaughtering people. And it's a lot of fun to play it, and then you get that ability for like the rest of the game. And it's a lot of fun. And then the game kind of ends. And it's like, is he embracing the dark side for the rest of his life?
That's how it ends?
Yeah. They like never address it again, that he was embracing darkness.
They're setting up the third then, presumably.
Yes, but that was kind of his whole story in the second. It's like, what was his story in the second, if not his struggle with the dark side? It was just him embracing the dark side, but it's not like he fully embraced it. They just left a lot on the table. But they kill Bode, and then Seer is dead, and Eno Cordova is dead, and they found Tanalorr, so the path is kind of in shambles, but they have a really interesting place to pick up the story, either in Jedi 3, the sequel to Survivor, that I'm sure will come eventually, or another story, Kenobi Season 2, could have Tanalorr, because like it is a really interesting story beat for the path that they could go to this safe place from the Empire, and they could, train and grow an army, which is what Dagan Gera wanted to do, or they could just live. And either way, I would love to see it again. But the story officially ends with the funeral of Bode and Eno Cordova and Seer, and Merrin uses her Night Sister magic to like light the pyre of all their bodies, and it's a really nice moment. And Bode's daughter Kata is still there, and it's like, is Merrin and Cal, because Merrin and Cal also start a relationship. They fall in love and get together, which I love to see. But are they going to like raise this 8-year-old girl through adulthood? Like, she's their responsibility.
Is that going to be the third game? It's going to be her perspective?
A foundling.
I would love that.
And we're going to fast forward 15 years? 10 years?
I don't know, because, I mean, you got to fast forward at least sometime, and wherever they go from there, like having found Tanalorr and what that implies for the galaxy, I'm really excited to see where that goes. Honestly, I would rather see it in a book than a third game, because it took me 14 and a half hours to beat this game, which honestly is about how long it would take me to do it as a book also. But it was just, I felt like a chore doing it. Just do this, to do this, to do this, to get, what was the equivalent of 10 minutes of story elements. And I would rather just read a book of it. But it was overall a good game. Not a great Star Wars game. I'm glad I played it. I really wish I played it on console with the better performance, but what are you going to do?
All right. Well, there you go, folks. That was Luke's breakdown, review, thoughts.
His rogue episode.
That was his rogue episode.
That's my rogue one. I wish you guys would play it. I think you would like it.
Well, he didn't give a scathing review. You're never going to pick it up again.
No, I'm still going to play it.
Fat chance.
I mean, I'm never going to play Fallen Order again, but I love that game.
Yeah. How long are we at right now? Like an hour?
46.
No way. 46. Dang. All
Not
right.
bad.
First 6 minutes. We're probably about nothingness, though. We're probably at about 40 minutes.
I was trying really hard to talk fast. I kept thinking of more things.
I know. I felt bad. I felt you were in the zone. I was like, I feel like I'm going to interrupt like a lot more. Anything else? How do you want to end this? How do we end the last one?
G'day, folks.
Yeah, I got nothing after that.
I have no idea.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right.
No.
Yep, that's it. See ya.
Thanks for listening. This has been Luke's Rogue One on Force for Thought.
G'day, folks.